So I got the pleasure to talk with Charlie Bartley. He has recently just become the resident director of the live experience of Magic Mike in Las Vegas. He also was an usher dancer. He's done many, many things. He was second runner-up, grand finalist of So You Think You Can Dance. That's where I got to meet him. Not only is Charlie talented and very, very intelligent in our industry, he's also caring, open, and honest. So enjoy the interview. He shares a lot of his knowledge, how he deals with things, how he became an artist. There's a lot to learn from Charlie, so enjoy. This is the first question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Let's do this. So how and when did you find your passion?
How and when did I find my passion? I honestly, it's a funny, slow burn because when I first started dancing, it was born out, I guess, out of an interest of it all, but I didn't really necessarily consider it a passion for a long, long time. It definitely became part of my identity. Like everyone would be like, "Oh, that was Charlie's a dancer. Charles is a dancer." Well, and then it wasn't until we started to get to the end of high school that I went to Sydney and started watching, some of the full time performing arts schools, and just that was sort of a recognition that you can like take this beyond just a dance studio in the middle of nowhere. That probably was, you could say that was maybe the start of the passion, but I was sort of like pursuing a goal, dream, like I was using other things to try to get me further and further and further. Like there was a bit of ego involved there, and some like want for success and recognition and attention. Then you get on something like So You Think You Can Dance, and you get that sort of stuff and it feels good, but then you sort of like, it becomes hollow after a while. Keep moving on, keep building more credits. I wouldn't say I really started feeling like dance was a super part of me until my mid 20s, which is sort of
Wow.
a funny thing to say, and it requires a lot of hindsight to get there. But that was when I was sort of like, oh, I like really sort of love doing this, and that I would do this without these other things attached to it. So you could say that there was like a little lantern of passion in there all along, crowded by other things. And then, I always had a problem with calling myself an artist too. I always felt like that was super pretentious. And some people
Right.
still use it in a very pretentious way to like have opinions and be, obnoxious and things like that. And I find that very, unnecessary, because an artist is way less about who you are than rather than how you see the world. It's like
Yep.
that sort of thing, rather than like, I'm an artist, I'm away from everyone else, when really an artist is the idea to see the world and then bring it to other people in a very new perspective. And I really didn't start feeling like I discovered that part of myself till, the mid 20s. And now I'm happy to like call myself that, because I found a really genuine way to do that. And so that passion really ignited not until I had succeeded in a way. I had like conquered some of the egotistical things that I wanted to do. So, not to say that that's a great way to go about it. It's probably better to sort of like hear, if you're hearing me say it, then you can say, okay, well, what other, am I chasing things that are not necessarily authentic or that are external? Like what's the part of me that really enjoys this, and why do I like that? And then sort of like drill into that, because that'll hold you and elevate you and keep you probably a little bit more fulfilled earlier on in your career.
Okay. Um, do you feel that you became better at your craft once you discovered that and that you admitted that to yourself?
I think so. Yeah, there was a I mean, I've always been driven and hardworking. So those are like things that just kept me pushing through. I would say, but I always felt like I was an amalgamation of a lot of other people in the
Right.
beginning. I was like, I'll take a little bit of Timatic, or I take a bit of you, or like I'll take a little bit of all the Kenny Wormel and all these people, and I smash them together to make a version of myself. And then as you sort of learn about yourself as well, you start to go, well, I actually kind of really like this, and it might be different from what you had originally attached to. And in that way, you become a like more authentic artist. And I definitely became a better dancer and more emotive, truly. Like within
Yeah.
that, and that sort of like that connects with people more than just the coolest tricks on the planet. Is like, can you break that barrier between people with just sort of like authenticity and vulnerability, and that can be in many different shapes and forms. You're trying to affect someone, and I don't know if you can affect someone if you don't like know who you are and then truly express
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Great answer, mate. Awesome. Yeah. I agree with you. I was a little bit different in the way that I felt the passion was there the second I went on stage.
Right.
Like when I was like 8, it was like a bug and it was always there.
Mm.
But when you started talking about the artistry, I had a similar sort of outlook at that. I thought that it was a bit pretentious, and my ego was definitely taking over. And then as I've matured and really wanted to connect and be authentic, that's when I did start to find my artist, and then start to think like an artist in the way of like how can I affect and add value to people, and I've got to do that by making choices that I want instead of what is expected from me. So
Mm.
I'm with you on that one, mate. I love it.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the next question?
Ready.
How did you get your first paid job?
My first paid gig, it would have technically been after So You Think You Can Dance. That to the very, very first paid job that I felt like I was a professional working dancer. To get that, that is a long process, and mine is honestly very unique. I I was always aware of the opportunity of So You Think You Can Dance. It was spurred on by, and this is a little serendipitous, is that a friend of mine, Kat, who was also on the show, we made up a dance routine in a half-hour thing while we're doing full-time performing arts at Brent Street. We performed that at an industry night, which don't really occur anymore, unfortunately, but they were a chance to be seen by people, choreographers, dancers. So it just so happened that that night the producers of So You Think You Can Dance were in. They really liked our performance, and that spurred us on to be asked to audition for So You Think You Can Dance. This was all done very like surreptitiously and sort of cleverly, but you could argue that we were just following a very simple passion of just wanting to perform and dance and create something, and that by putting it out there, that someone saw us. If you wanted to translate it to sort of these days, you could put it across to social media. You know, that if you wanted to be seen by people, you do have to just start very simply with, I love doing this. Let me try to create something as cool and as unique and interesting and fun as possible, and then present it in whatever capacity that is. That'll get you seen. I was lucky enough that that eventually got me through the door to a manager, Mark Byrne, who we were all sort of given to after So You Think You Can Dance, and he sort of started to push me in the direction of work. And being on So You Think You Can Dance also got me in the door with a lot of choreographers who happened to work with me, liked me. And so there's an important part there where I worked extremely hard for them. I had enough talent to get me in the door, and that I was receptive and kind and a nice person to work with. Those are kind of a three-pronged thing for a reputation which you can build. Because had I been someone egotistical on the show, I might have had some other capacities, talented and hardworking. But if you don't want me around while we sit around between gigs or between the performance and the tech, then you're not going to want me around. So to
Hmm.
get there for me, it was a unique sort of experience. If I sort of translate that to what you can continue to do or how you get into your first gig, it is a constant repetition of showing up to and being involved physically amongst the community. Yes, you can be on Instagram and you can be seen that way. People have been booked that way, but there's a physical presence of turning up to class or being at community events or knowing people that in a genuine capacity too, that can sort of like help you be familiar. Because I've turned up to class on class on class, especially over here in LA, and they don't recognize someone who you want to work for. They won't recognize you for the first 6 or 7 times, you know, and then suddenly it starts to be like, oh, you're a familiar face, and then you can sort of be pulled into their thought capacity. But without doing that and without that consistency and persistence, you won't actually ever, you'll just be continually sort of be a face in a big crowd. So there's a way that you need to like push yourself forward, which I was happy to do by putting myself on stage on So Thinking Theirs and risking the fact that they could go, oh, you're not good. There's a risk involved in there, and we just do that more and more often with social media these days. You have to sort of be risky in going, this is what I think is good or what I like or who I am, and what do you think of that, and not to take that too personally when you if you get no's, when you get no's or dislikes or whatever it is. You've got to risk that to sort of like get in the door.
Sure. Um, and yeah, just to sort of go on what you're saying there at the end is, what if they put something out there and it doesn't go to plan?
I heard something once that when you sort of create something, and this goes for writing too, like when you write a thought, it becomes a physical thing and it becomes sort of outside of you. So it's something that you've created, and that can go for I think about that in regards to choreography too, is that if you want to put something out there, it is now an entity outside of you. It has essence of you in there, but it is not you in a way. If you write a sentence, you can rewrite the sentence. If you do an 8 count, you can rework the 8 count. It's something that is not like born from your like person, your actual like identity. It's something that you created and can mold and kind of looks like you but isn't. And in that way, you can put things out and sort of have a disconnect from the evaluation of that thing, rather than being like, if you judge that, you're also judging me. That's not
Right.
necessarily the truth. You're judging this thing I created, which is outside of me. And if there's things that need to be adjusted or critiqued, okay, that's interesting. I'm willing to take some of that on board, and other parts I might not. So there's some discernment there on the actual artist's part to be like, well, this is something that I really like and that I want to keep like sacred for me. But then also I see your point. Maybe I could have done this better and this better and this better. And if you have that openness and that objectivity, which can only happen if you are separated from the thing you're creating in a way that you can make yourself better, the product better, and then also yourself in the process a little bit better. And so that's how I do it. If I want to put something out, I got to know that this is not me. This is like a cultivation of me.
Oh, I like that. That's a good way to think about it. I try to nurture my ideas instead
That's
of going like, I believe in having good product and adding value to the world. And at one point you do have to do that. But at the start of something that I'm trying to establish, what if it's good or if it's right or it's what I want to say, I treat it like my children. And I nurture the idea, and look for feedback as fast as I can. And that
mm,
seems to work for me. But it is a big thing, and I still get nervous when I put stuff out. So um, I think you have to feel a little bit like that just to let yourself know that you care.
yeah.
Um, but you still got to put it out there. You are in a world of performing,
Mm,
and you have to accept that you will be judged. It's part
yeah.
of the agreement that you have with the world. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's exactly right. I think that that idea of like holding something close to you for a second to see if it's something that you actually you care about, whether it's a piece of music that keeps coming back to you and you're like, I got to do something to this, or it's an idea that you want to like evolve and push. Yeah, I think it's nice to have that sort of like hibernation period where it's just yours and you can be excited about it. And so that when things actually get hard in the process of creating it, that that sort of still resonates within you rather than like having it judged too early. I've definitely done that where I've had this idea, and then you talk about it with someone and you sort of you get too many opinions too quickly instead of like being like,
Right.
no, I really like this. And so I totally get that sort of like, nurture it to begin with so that you actually feel like it's something worthy of pursuing.
Right. Love it. You ready for question three?
Ready.
Okay. What's your strategy to networking and promoting yourself?
Networking and promoting, huh? That's yeah, it's a tough one these days. It's funny because I grew up in a period where social media wasn't a thing, and now slowly throughout my career it became the biggest thing. So
Right.
I've had this experience where in the beginning it was turning up to events, to community events, and that was, and I think still is to a degree, a huge part of it is to be amongst people, to meet a lot of people, and I've been around dancers who have given out cards, who have like networked in a way that feels businessy, and
Right.
I always loved watching the reaction of the person sort of on the receiving end of that because it's not as genuine and as it doesn't get as cultivated as you think. A good conversation about something interesting, especially if it's common, whether it's a performance you've just watched or something that you have in common, you both go to a class or whatever that thing is, that's going to build a relationship more authentically and genuine than trying to force feed someone your resume or talents or try to present yourself in a work ready way. I think especially now they're going to, I know people who have been booked like straight off Instagram, and it happens in an insane amount. I've luckily been on the other side of the casting table, and that's the go-to. So that's the resume these days. That's the CV, and I'm terrible at it, quite honestly. Oh, I
Hmm.
don't know what that
What
was,
was
but
that?
I don't know. That's something my computer really liked.
You
The
did
fact that
some sort of
the fact that I'm
facial
terrible at
expression?
social media. Okay, just keep it
I
neutral.
like
So I
it. I like
do
it.
the 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 social media part of it is still hard for me. I'm lucky that I've been able to build a reputation sort of before this became insanely important. But it still affects me. I know that I probably could be better at posting photos which represent me as an artist,
Right.
and posting, clips of me dancing. These are all things where you go, oh, I really like this person. I need to find out how they move, how they look, do they fit the aesthetic and the brief, and even down to like, do they look like a cool person? Like you could sort of tell that
Mm.
from some social media stuff. So promoting myself is probably turning up to class a lot, not badgering people about work. I think if you come in hot and being like, feel desperate, I think I think any choreographer can feel that off someone. There needs to be a confidence about you that you can come in, dance, get out the door, say hi or whatever, and that confidence sort of reads a little bit more than like, oh, I need to like get a verbal agreement of that you like me, that you want to work with me. If they don't say anything, they don't say anything. You got to turn up again and do it
Right.
all over again. So,
Yeah.
and then in regards to networking and that sort of, try not to keep it simply to the people that you think will get you something, or that you can get something from. It's so many times I've had really good friends get me big gigs, and I didn't ask them for it, and I never would, but they liked me and liked who I was, and were like, well, let's get him involved or let's get her involved,
Right.
and so think laterally as well as up and down. It's not always just a climb upwards. It's also like feeling kinship amongst other dancers, because as you if you stick around for a long time, those dancers will suddenly be in positions of power, really, or leadership, and maybe they get a gig that they need to book dancers from. So it is really just a 360 view of being involved, rather
Right.
than just like who's above me and how can I climb this ladder. It's how can I be of use to anybody around me, including my friends, even if that is to just help them like through emotional problems or move house or whatever that is. If you do that with a genuine kind heart, I think you'll find that people come back around to you as well.
Just to go loop back a little bit, you mentioned don't be too full on with your approach with like promoting yourself to people, especially in a real life situation. Do you have any sort of advice for someone that might be a little bit more being too standoffish, stepping back and having those wide eyes open and not knowing what to say? Is there any sort of information we could pass on to them?
Yeah, I mean, the being timid was me. I thought that I
Right.
had to wait until I was told, like, sort of out, like even to try to get my first visa over here, I was like, someone will notice me, someone will, ask about it. They're not going to ask. And especially when it comes to just meeting people that perhaps you've like idolized or something like that, just try to be your genuine self. It is insanely hard because I know a lot of dancers and a lot of artists who are timid and sort of introverted in a way, but we're in a performative sector of the world. So it's kind of contradictory in that way. If you can keep it casual, that's honestly the best way to do it. To sort of befriend them in an authentic way. And to befriend someone takes a long time. So it's not like you're going to suddenly connect and click with someone within 2 minute conversation after class. It's going to take a second, years, in fact, sometimes. So trying to just find that connectivity. It can just be like complimentary. You can give a compliment to someone, but allow it to sort of be accepted or in whatever manner they wish to take it. They could be like, thanks so much, or they could be ignore it, or they could, so it's just getting onto something that you want to do. This is how I want to connect with you, and then get off it again, so that you're not hanging around like a bad smell, or being too shy. There's some middle ground there where you should really broach it and say, hey, this, that, and the other. I'd like this, or I love this about you. I'd love to, if you ever need an assistant,
Sure.
let me know, and then get off of
Yeah.
it and keep moving.
Yeah. And also too, it's good to be aware that there's plenty of opportunity.
Hmm.
So going and trying this and messing it up and being a little bit too full on or being a bit timid is okay. If you stuff it up there, then that person. Most people are quite nice, and if you come in and be genuine again the next time that you see them, it'll eventually work out.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't expect to nail it the first time. This is something that takes a very very long time to get comfortable with, and for it to feel like you.
Oh,
Anyway, but
100%. No, I
yeah,
agree.
love
I
it.
agree completely.
Okay, so this question: what skill have you learnt outside of dancing to be successful?
There's quite a few skills that I've learned outside of dancing that have helped. Um, I mean, people skills is the biggest one. I started reading psychology books when I was in my mid 20s, spurred on by own personal needs to be a little bit, I don't know, better is a to use a loose term, and more personable and more connected rather than just the guy sitting off in the corner. And that has led me on this incredible journey of learning how to interact with people, and how to be a comfortable like entity for other people. That is huge, that you can sort of stay very calm collected in very chaotic circumstances, and that is by knowing your own ethics and knowing your own beliefs and knowing your own morals, and how that settles you rather than like is combatant. You hold them nice and tight. So learning about yourself is like a big one that you really need to get a hold of first. Then you can move from this like really solid foundation towards other people, especially in like these roles now, as dance captain or resident director and stuff like that. Your whole job is dealing with people. How to give someone notes, how to read if they are feeling anxious, if they're accepting of it, if they're nervous about it, if they're egotistical about it. Like, reading other people is a huge thing, and that is something that just comes from a bit of insight and a bit of reflection. So if something does go wrong, you have a bad interaction, that you don't immediately blame someone else, or blame yourself, that you sort of analyze it in a way. And so there's time there that I've always taken away and just been like, that felt awkward, or what could I have done better in that circumstance? And that constant like insight into myself and that interaction has led to much better relationships with a lot of people. Alongside that, public speaking is huge. You don't think necessarily that dancers should dancers speak a lot, but they do. Um, Whether that's even just like slating in an audition and knowing how to do that confidently and in within yourself, and then to also just like talk amongst creative people, especially in a professional setting, what that looks like over a Zoom meeting rather than, if you're asked to contribute a point or you do have a point to contribute, that you can do that in a professional manner and have an injection of um, vibrance to it without having to be too blunt or too emotional about it. There's like, again, a nice balance. And then another big thing, which I've always got complimented on, and same with Anthony too, my younger brother, we get complimented on our like clerical skills, literally being able to reply to emails and being concise about that. If your agent emails you and you get back to them 3 days later, that's a sign of a lazy person or a non-passionate person or someone who doesn't care, rather than being like, no, I'm in this. I want to reply. I can do it in a clear manner, and I can, if I need information, I know how to ask for that in a professional manner, rather than sort of demanding, or it's everything is a back and forth rather than you're all here for me sort of mentality. So there's quite a lot around dance that can help build you up and solidify you. So you need to get in the room and smash it out. But then on the outskirts of it all, you need to know how to function in a working environment.
Brilliant. That's so good, man. Love it. I've so in this process of building this group and helping people, I've built like a full on like online community with all these resources and stuff. And I have this whole pipeline of just, starting from discovering yourself all the way through to like being a personal business.
Hmm.
And just the stuff you're saying is just like landing in these spots, and I'm just like, yes, yes, Charlie. It's
Go
like,
for it. Yeah.
yeah, just I'm trying to help them have just the map. I just remember at the start, I just didn't have a clue. I just did not know where to go.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help as much as I can.
No, I love it, dude. I was the same. When we stepped out of So You Think You Dance, I was like, what the am I supposed to be doing now?
Yeah, and everyone's got their opinion. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
like, but their opinion's not what's best for you. Their opinion is this is what worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's a great way of putting it.
and
Yeah.
and we don't have a set career path as a dancer. Just like what you said, you've had to learn all these different things outside that. So every single one of us has to have these unique different skills to be successful in our career.
Yeah.
And so getting that information from just one person, like one source, is very, very complicated. It does not
Mm.
make sense. So it's
No.
finding those skills of how to discover who you are and what are you good at. Like that's where you start having a really good career.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so how do you maintain a professional career?
Maintaining a professional career, it's honestly a lot of work and it's a lot of repetition, I would say, of the same. Sometimes we think that your career will just continue to go up and up and up. That is often not the case. Lots of ebb and flows in regards to it. So it's about knowing when you're busy how to try to keep a lot of plates spinning, but then also when you're in sort of a lull, that you can keep your momentum going, that you don't suddenly sink into nothingness. I've found over a long period of time that there are things that a routine almost that I come back to when I don't have as much work or I'm not as busy. That's usually, and they're things that will help you get back to. They're like springboards. So one of them, of course, in LA is going to class. You need to always be brushing up on your skills. I'm 34. I still need to be going to class because things are changing, dance changes, like art changes, music changes. You need to sort of keep up with that. And even as a choreographer, I need to keep up with that because the relevance will come in handy. So staying relevant is important. That is research in many different ways. And it's also keeping sane in regards to your own personal life. So there's a professional element of it where you need to keep going to class, you need to have your headshots updated, you need to be hanging with friends and like in regards to like collaborating with them and working on stuff. when I talked to Tim Matic a long time ago, he was like, people just love to see people moving. And I think I agree with that, that if you have momentum to your work and your life, that people want to be involved with that. And I know that because I want to be involved with movers and shakers too.
Right.
So whatever that capacity is and whatever that means to you, keep moving. I think sitting still is really a detrimental thing, or having a stagnant mindset. And that's professionally. Personally, you need to balance everything out, because if you put all your eggs inside this one basket where you put your entire identity and self-worth on getting something, credits, a gig, being seen, that sort of stuff, I've watched it too many times to tell you that it won't bring you down. I've seen it over and over again, that people just get inside their own head, and then they're their own detriment, because they couldn't stop for 2 seconds and enjoy family time, or enjoy simple pleasures, or enjoy friends, take time off. That's not an uncommon thing to do, is for people to go, I'm going to step away from dance for 2 months, and then they come back
Right.
reinvigorated. That's in order to like survive. I did it too. I mean, there was a period of time where I'd been over in LA just grinding, and I was starting to get a little frustrated with it. And so I jumped into comedy improv for just as a, a side fun little project. And funnily enough, filling that cup sort of overflowed back into my dance cup. And I was like, oh, I feel like good about myself. I was artistic and creative, and okay, back to dance I go. So
Right.
it's not always like drilling down on this one thing over and over again. That works for some people. And again, there are zero rules. They're all suggestions, but it's not uncommon for that to happen. That people sort of need a break, and then you come back to it. To be just entirely solely focused and passionate for your entire life, I think that's not as common as you might think. People guess themselves and guess their career, and they find ways to come back to it. And I think if you have a good personal life, that can support those ebbs and flows.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I agree with all of that, Charlie. I had a moment too where I stepped away from everything. I was very busy in Sydney. Everything was lining up and it was the way it was meant to be. But I was unhappy. I was exhausted.
Mm,
It was not fun anymore.
yeah.
And I did the same. I stepped away. I ran back home to the Gold Coast. Um, and it was the same thing as like I started concentrating on other things, and that creativity came back tenfold,
Mm,
and I had so much more energy and a direction I wanted to go. But that's hard because you kind of in a relationship with your dancing. You start off at such a young age, and it's your identity, and
mm,
and you feel like everything revolves around you being that person, and being able to step away from that for the first time it's like breaking up with yourself. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So, but it's definitely healthy and important to do, because
Yeah.
yeah, it's so external, performing so external.
Mm. Yeah, and I
Mm.
think it's just like it just making people understand that that's not, it's like if you sort of fall out of that mindset of just like it's my whole life, that it isn't the end. It doesn't have to be the end, and that it is way more common than you think. I always felt like,
Mm.
oh, if I'm not constantly in love with this, then I shouldn't do it. That's not the
Right.
case at all, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome, mate. Okay, we're nearly finished. So
Awesome.
this one, here we go. What advice would you give yourself at the start of your career and the middle of your career?
What advice would I give at the beginning and then at the middle of my career? That it's honestly a really tough one. I think I was having a lot of fun in the beginning. I honestly, I'm very, very proud of what I did. That I would probably say that I would have liked to try to like expand my vision of a career. I had some goals which I luckily ticked off very early, and what that left me was sort of just like an open expanse um, of nothingness. I was like, I don't
Mm.
know where I'm supposed to be going from here. And I always thought that, like the next dance credit would make me feel a bit better. that if I looked at people who were 10 years in and thought that's just like an eternity in a dance career. And now I'm 15 years into a dance career and I'm like, wow, I'm still like wanting to do a lot and still healthy enough to do a lot. So it's much longer and much more expansive than I originally thought. So if I had some ability to be like, just look outside or keep your mind open really for the possibilities that if this big thing doesn't happen, that there are still just as many fulfilling opportunities that don't look like that. You know,
Right.
there's so much around it, and the ways that people start on dance and then end up going this way or that way and enjoying their artistic lives even though it was a diversion from what they originally wanted.
Yeah.
That's something that can happen. And for me too, it's I believe that will probably happen soon where I will start to fall in love with something else heavily, and I'll start to like pull away from performing dance at least, and I now am not afraid of that
Hmm.
because I can see that there's so much more fulfilling things to do. Then in the mid, I guess that would have been handy to know at the beginning of the career because it takes a lot of pressure off having to achieve everything immediately. I
Right.
was like, if I don't do everything by the time I'm 25, I'll be done.
Yeah. No.
but,
No.
but now it's like, okay, you can keep going for a while. I know people who are 42 and still dancing with Usher and stuff like that. So it's like
Yeah.
that, just breaking my mental boundaries. In the middle of my career, I would have liked to hear that it's okay to like slump. That I really felt it when I moved to LA that like I felt like I jumped back down the ladder, like right back to the beginning. And that was I was ready to work and be like drive forward, but it was really hard, and that like I can rebuild if necessary, that I can, that you hit many peaks, perhaps is a great way of putting it. And that
Right. That makes
it's not a
sense.
consistent, it's not a consistent slope upwards, and it's not up, down, stay down. It's sort of like up, maybe a little bit down, and then up more, and then down again, and then plateau for a bit, and then it just does not happen sequentially. But it's for me, if you continue, I'd always just kept a very keen eye on how I feel and what I wanted to achieve, and I think that helped me get through some of those times. But it would have been nice to know that like that you can rebuild and that you can sort of find another peak again.
Okay. That's cool.
Hmm.
And the last one is, what do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, that is a tough one to figure out. I will try to continue dancing. Yeah, I probably used some very vague language then. I want to continue dancing and I will push for that because I think there's still opportunities which are available to me. But I'm also aware of the different opportunities that might arise and that might take me away from that. I want to be right. I'm writing a lot these days, screenplays, books, things of that nature. I want to evolve that because I love that part of expression now. I use my brain as much as my brawn, which is
Right.
nice, and it's a nice way of storytelling just in another form. Um, I honestly can't look too far ahead. I have no idea because anytime I've looked too far ahead, it's always changed. I have an optimum goal of having a movie made and having a little bit more foundation in regards to my personal life, like where having a house or a place to call my own. The sort of transient lifestyle does it's fun, but it also gets a little tedious after a while. So I guess priorities are changing as I get older, and doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice the intensity of my passions now, but that I can look to compound and solidify my life so that I can build more and more into the future rather than just being whisked along by the wind.
Got it. Yeah. So
Sorry.
it's a similar mentality that you've had your whole life. You're going to keep that going. You start looking for things and staying open minded. That's the way to do it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I know it's a little vague, but at the same time, like I've become comfortable with that vagueness
Right.
that I
Yeah.
and that's not an easy process. And honestly, it still gets me sometimes. But the fact that I don't know what I'm doing in 6 months is okay now. I sort
Yeah.
of trust and have faith that something will happen, or I have the ability to make something happen. And that
Yeah.
takes a long time to build up. Well, it had for me.
Fantastic. Well, you're an awesome dancer. You're an awesome talker, but you're an awesome person too, mate. And I really appreciate you being here and just sharing your advice. You know, I find that there's a lot of people in our industry, I think because it is competitive, that
Mm.
they hold a lot of their tricks to their chest.
Yeah.
And those people, I really believe in this. Those people that are the givers and really putting themselves out there are the most successful. You know,
I
they are those people that help end up always having the opportunities in front of them. So you deserve everything you got, and congratulations on the new job.
Thanks.
And I'm looking forward to whenever this movie comes out.
One day it's gonna happen. I swear. Yeah. But thanks for having
Awesome.
me. I really appreciate it. I hope that you have something there that people can use and take with them in whatever capacity. So I think what you're doing is awesome. So if you need anything from me, just let me know.
Yeah, easy done, mate.
Cheers.